Hey guys, welcome back for another video. Tonight we're going to be doing the commentary for Donkey Kong Country 3. There's going to be a little bit of a caveat tonight. The weather is rather hellish and stuff, so you're going to be hearing thunder and rain in the background. It is something that is completely out of my hands, and I've done my best to literally try to dampen the noise as much as possible. So tonight's subject is going to be Donkey Kong Country 3. This is going to be a much longer video, and as such I feel that I'm not going to be talking for the entire duration of it. Clocking in at a little over 3 hours, I feel like I don't really have 3 hours of commentary really to give this game, so I'm going to go and just give commentary at very select points and stuff, and that's how this video is going to roll. So, thank you for joining me tonight, and let's go ahead and get started. So I wasn't really sure if I was going to be doing a long play for Donkey Kong Country 3. It is my least favorite out of all the Donkey Kong games and stuff. 1 and 2 were amazing, but with 3 it did more wrong things than right things. So while it's still a really good game, it doesn't really feel like it's as good as the other two. Out of the original trilogy, I would put this one at the bottom. So they tried to go with more of an open world kind of feel. They shot around. They give you this wide, kind of wide open world to go and check out and stuff. And as you explore these areas, you collect parts and stuff for Funky to actually go and create new methods of transportation for you. And you're going to be going ahead and bringing your, his nephew, I believe, along the way. So, the first real gripe that I have with this game is I don't really care for Kiddy too much as a character. I kind of feel like that he's trying to be a direct copy of Donkey Kong himself, except he's a lot heavier and way more useless. So the big issue that I think that I had with Kiddy whenever I'd go to play as him is he's too heavy to do a lot of platforming challenges. I feel like he never really quite clears the platforming challenges as well as you would kind of expect him to. And as such, I feel he's not a terribly fun character to actually go and play as. So the one thing that they did really well with this game is they did a really good job shaking it up. I like the wide open map. I like how you can take vehicles to new areas and stuff, and I like how as you progress you get bigger, better, and different vehicles that you can take with you on your journey. So the first area that we have here is it's like summer camp themed, I want to say. I really like how they did it. They mixed up the enemies and stuff. I really love how the bonus barrels are more hidden in plain sight. I think it's kind of funny how you can use Kiddy's immense weight to actually go and bust through the floors and be able to get to a lot of these areas and stuff. Like, he fails with platforming, but he succeeds in breaking things. Which, hindsight, it's kind of funny. You know, like, it's a little bit silly and stuff. The bonus coins make a reprise. They shot around, and they're used to open up other levels like they were in Donkey Kong Country 2. They're still really fun to get. I have done a 100% run of this game before, and the bonus levels are actually really, really nice. The theming for the beginning areas is completely fresh, I feel. I like the whole summer camp feel and stuff. It kind of reminds me of how fresh the pirate ship was. The only real gripe that I have is there's not really a lot here that's familiar. They didn't really keep a lot of the characters from the other two games. I'm pretty sure they actually replaced most, if not all of them, so what we have with this is we have things that are completely new, but we don't really have too much stuff that's really familiar. I feel that it kind of takes me out of the game a little bit because there's not really much that hasn't really been changed, and while it's nice that they were trying to do something new, I feel that not having enough familiar stuff kind of takes away from it a little bit. Kind of makes me feel like they wanted to go and try to make another game, but just kind of slap the Donkey Kong name on it. So Donkey Kong Country 3 does a couple of cool things. I remember tracking bonus rooms and tracking all of the stuff you did in Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 was a really big nightmare, I think. So one of the cool things about Donkey Kong Country 3 is it'll flat out tell you when you collect the DK coin, and then it'll flat out tell you when you go and you do all the bonus rooms and stuff. And you can tell this by going, and when you look at the map, the flagpole for that particular level will actually have little mini flags attached to it, and one represents how many bonus rooms you've done, well, if you've done all of them, and then the other one represents whether or not you've actually gone and gotten the DK coins. So it made backtracking for this game a lot easier, I think. It was one of the things that I actually did like about it. So the barrels are still the standard affair. It's destroy enemies, collect stars. With this one, you have green bananas that you have to catch as well within the time limit before they disappear. So they kind of kept the same with the bonus rooms and stuff, while everything else was kind of changed. I like how they kind of made this area not just a summer camp, but they kind of gave it like a logging facility vibe to it a little bit. It kind of speaks back to industrialization, I feel, which is kind of a common theme in all of the Donkey Kong Country games, you know, and well, a lot of games from that era had themes of environmentalism. So I think it's kind of nice how you have to go and, you know, pull on these levers to open up the spillway doors, and you just kind of go and you have to race through it really fast. You know, it's a fun little gimmick and stuff. A lot of the enemies have been redesigned the shot around, you know, like typically the data for this bee, wasp, whatever is the same, strangely enough, as the zinger. So a lot of these enemies are using old data, but they got fresh facelifts and stuff, and I think a lot of them are kind of cool. A lot of them have an industrial feel, you know, like this this bee here has a buzzsaw for an ass, and then it has exhaust pipes on the side. The rats have been replaced entirely and stuff, and I would have loved to see them keep a couple of the old enemies, I feel, you know, to have that familiarity and stuff when you go and play the game. You know, like a little bit of familiarity is actually really nice, because you kind of feel like when you boot up the game, you kind of feel like you're slipping on an old comfy pair of pants. You know, except these ones are like a little bit newer, but when they go and they replace like this many enemies and stuff, I kind of feel it loses a lot of its charm. Rare has opted to use the same engine that they used for Donkey Kong 1 and 2. And this one, I feel they kind of stretched it to extremes a bit, because compared to the other two, this one suffers from way more slowdown. So the DK coins make a return. They're actually carried by these little gators now. And the thing is you always have to throw a barrel to where it hits them in the back, and it kind of creates like a little bit of a puzzle to solve, which is really nice. After a while, when you go and you defeat enough of them, you can actually go and, well, I think it's all of them, you go and you gain the ability to create the gyrocopter, which can pretty much go anywhere, and it's really nice. So these little bear shops are kind of like a main staple for all of Donkey Kong Country 3. What they do is, it's basically a giant item collect-a-thon, and you take certain items to certain bears, and what they'll do is they'll allow you to exchange those items, and it helps a lot with progression for the game and stuff. It opens up more of the map, and it allows you to go and help collect birds as well, and then the bird collecting also kind of goes into getting the different ending for it and everything else. Like, this game actually has a lot to it compared to Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2. This game is more of a collect-a-thon. I mean, you have the bonus rooms and stuff, but they literally have items in your items and stuff, and after a while I felt with Donkey Kong Country 3 that it actually got really tedious. I didn't mind it with 1 and 2. You know, with 1 we just had the bonus rooms and collecting the little animal icons and stuff, which was really nice. With 2 we had the DK coins and then the bonus room coins and stuff, which could be used to open up new levels. That was pretty nice as well. It really encouraged exploration. But with this one, it's all kinds of coins. Like, there's bear coins, bonus coins, DK coins, and then there's birds to collect, and then there's various items to collect. I can understand wanting to go and expand gameplay value by making the game have a little bit more pre-playability and be a little bit longer and stuff, but I don't mind collecting some items, but when it's in excess like this, I feel it gets kind of boring after a while, because you're sitting there and you're like, oh, you know, well, I gotta go and I gotta get this item and take it to this bear, and then I gotta go and after I take this item to this bear, you know, this area will open up, and then I have to go and do a little mini puzzle of Simon Says to actually get the bird, and then, you know, release the bird, and it's just, it feels like a lot after a while. So they try to add a lot of variety to this game and stuff. Like, they do a lot with it. There's a lot of original stuff here. I can't really make the claim that there isn't. But the thing is while there's a lot of original stuff here, I feel like much of it wasn't done terribly well. You know, like a lot of the enemies, while they have different stylings, they're pretty much, in a roundabout way, they're kind of rehashes of enemies from the other games as well. You know, like this little chomping croc is kind of like a prime example of that, you know. He's just a blue one, or yeah, he's just pretty much a blue one from the second game, just done a little bit more differently. And so it tries to do a lot of new things, I feel, but at the same time you kind of sit there and it's like, okay, there are a lot of new things, but there's not enough familiar things to really kind of cement it. The chunky snow effect from the first game actually makes a comeback, and it kind of wreaks havoc with my vision a fair bit. I wasn't really a fan of this in the first game, and I'm not really a fan of it now. You know, like, it just doesn't really feel necessary. I wish it was a little bit thinner like it was in the second game. So, using Kiddy Kong was kind of a nightmare for me. Like, whenever I could, I didn't really particularly care to use him as a character because he handles really, really badly. Like, he's really heavy. He doesn't have good response time. The way that he carries barrels is very awkward. Like, I understand that he's basically supposed to be a toddler and stuff, and that's what they had planned for this game, but it just doesn't feel right. Like, it doesn't really feel like it's as good as Donkey Kong Country 2. Like, when I would go play DK2, it was more or less, everything was very responsive and stuff. So if I made a mistake in DKC2, it felt like it was my fault, you know. But with DKC3, it feels like he's just too heavy to do a lot of things, and you know, he's pretty much a straight rip of Donkey Kong, but he's a lot heavier, he's not responsive for a lot of things. It just doesn't really feel super amazing to actually go and use him. So Murky Mill was actually a pretty good level, I think. I like what they did with the theming of this. So the whole gimmick with this particular level is you're going through the mill as a whole new character, which is an elephant that can pick up barrels and later on shoot water out of its snout and stuff, well, its trunk. And it's pretty nifty. So what you do in this level, more or less, is you see these rats, your elephant is scared shitless of these rats. And so what happens is you have to use these barrels to kill these rats so you can walk through the well-lit areas without the elephant seeing the rat freaking out and running in the other direction. I actually really kind of like this a lot. It's pretty cool. I think these new gators here are pretty silly as well. I think it's kind of cute how they bounce around like Tigger with their tongues hanging out of their mouths and stuff. And, you know, like, they do have fun character designs for this game, I think. But getting back to the mill, basically you have to go through the whole area without seeing a rat in the light. So the level revolves around getting barrels, wooden barrels, steel barrels, and like either destroying the rats or evading the rats, and that's how they chose to do this level, I feel. And so the level itself is actually really fun. The weird thing about the elephant animal that they've introduced here is the elephant animal feels like it has a little bit of a slide to it. Like when I feel like when I'm running and stuff, you know, there's a little bit of slide to my step. It feels kind of unstable to a certain extent. It's kind of like what the Rhino in the first game had, except it's a little bit more subtle and doesn't really feel as accurate, per se. But playing as the elephant is a complete and utter blast. I think that the design for the character is actually really cute and stuff. It's really nice how much utility that they gave the elephant's trunk and stuff. It can throw barrels, it can suck things up, it can spit water, like it does all kinds of fun things. Like they have a lot of mechanics attached to this elephant in general, and it really lends itself to the gameplay in general, which is really, really nice. The elephant's a little bit sluggish, but it kind of makes sense because, you know, it's an elephant. It's not as sluggish as Diddy Kong, I find. Like, the elephant has way more response time, and there's really no kind of crank up, I feel, to the overall movement of the character, and it's just really, really fun to play as, and much like the Rhino, you can go and bounce off of enemies and stuff, and there's just all kinds of fun things you can do with this character. Not everything in DKC3, I feel, was a wash. Like, it does a lot of good things, but it does a lot of bad things as well. The ability to go and do bonus rooms is carried over from DKC2, meaning that if you fail it, you can go back and do it again. Which is really nice because it allows you to go and like keep trying if you fail it and stuff, if you really want it. And some of these bonus rooms, like when I was doing this run and stuff, I didn't really... Like, if I failed it like once or twice, I would just kind of say to hell with it and move on and stuff. And it really was just kind of... It's cool to see that the bonus rooms are carried over from 2, but I feel that a lot of them are kind of boring. Some of them are kind of tedious and stuff, you know. And it wasn't like I was doing a 100% run for this particular game, so I didn't really focus on it too much. I focused more on beating it because this is, well, it's not a bad game per se. It's not my favorite Donkey Kong. I'd much rather go do 1 and 2 again. So I actually like this boss quite a bit. This boss was actually a lot of fun. This boss kind of caters a little bit to Kiddy Kong a little bit with the way that he handles throwable objects and stuff. So the whole idea here is this barrel here is extremely gluttonous. And so what happens is, you know, beetles come flying out in the form of barrels. You go, get him out of the barrel, jump on him, and then toss him in his mouth. He burps, he flies back. You know, and you basically rinse, dry, and repeat until he falls in this hole here. So the boss is actually really fun. It's not too difficult, it's not too easy. It's just something that's like really, really fun to do. It's nice because like a lot of these games were catering to not just kids but adults as well, and you know, they did a really good job with it. So you're going to be coming back to like a lot of these areas. I know with the bears you have to go and deliver like a lot of items and stuff, and this bear in particular wants bear coins for pretty much every item in the shop. The mirror's like really, really expensive. I think it's like 40 or 50 coins. But by the time you get to the end of the game, you're going to have more than enough of those coins to go back and buy it. So it's not like it's this huge hindrance to actually go and collect up all these coins and then bring them back. You're just going to be collecting them passively as the game goes on. So this is kind of an example of the item trading that you're going to do. This guy very clearly wanted a seashell essentially, and so he goes and he gives you a banana bird, which eventually goes back to Wrinkly Kong, and once you have all those, you get a new ending. But to get the ending, it's also tied into collecting DK coins, which is tied into collecting bonus coins. You know, it's literally collectibles in your collectibles and stuff, and it gets kind of tedious. So for this level, I thought it was actually really cool. I'm a real huge sucker for trees. I like the woods in general. So it was actually pretty cool to sit there and see a level that it kind of focuses around being inside these giant gargantuan trees and stuff. I like how the backgrounds are multi-layered and stuff in this game as well. It used to be that, you know, it wasn't like that with Donkey Kong 1, and then 2 had an extra background, but this one has 2 of them stacked, and then of course you have the foreground that you're sitting on. So I entered this barrel on accident. There's a couple of these barrels in the game. You fall in them, it just takes you to the end, so I kind of realized my mistake here. So I decided that I was just going to say to hell with it, run the area again, because I wanted to show the whole area, not just a small little piece of it. So I go and I start doing this area again, and you know, I didn't have to do it, but I actually really just like this level in general. It's really, really nice. I like the aesthetic of it. I don't really have much patience for any of these monkeys and stuff. This level has some caveats, I feel. With Kiddy Kong, he's a really huge character, and he doesn't really fit entirely in back of these half barrels that are supposed to be your shields. So, to make matters worse, I'm also kind of impatient when it comes to things like this, so it leads to me dying quite often and stuff. But the level itself is still fun regardless. You know, it's got pretty good pacing and stuff. It doesn't suffer too hard from the 4:3 aspect ratio, I feel. They try to give you a little lip overhead that tries to show you, you know, what's coming up, and, you know, they do an okay job with it. It's not the best, it's not the worst. I feel sometimes that a lot of these levels really aren't built for both Kongs. Like with the boss fight, I can understand, you know, having a preference, if you would, when it comes to which Kong to use, but I feel in terms of the dynamic, the Donkey Kong Country 2 actually does it a lot better, because if I lost a Kong in DKC 2, it wasn't really the end of the world. The level very much so still felt very playable and stuff, but with DKC 3, with as heavy as Kiddy is and stuff, like some levels are just really kind of struggle buses to get through, especially if they're like speed based, because he's such a hulking kind of cumbersome character that he just doesn't really have a lot of agility. And I feel that the game kind of suffers a fair bit for it. You know, it doesn't really feel as smooth as it really should. Like with this level right here, you can do it with both, but I find that Dixie actually has a better time with it, you know? So it really just doesn't really, it doesn't really feel feasible. And so the premise with this level is you're essentially racing to the end. You have a little timer in the corner there. Nothing happens if you go past a certain point with the timer, like it doesn't throw you into a fail state or anything like that, not as far as I'm aware. I've never experienced a fail state from it. However, if you beat it in record time, what happens is the bear for this area actually gets really upset. And he gets so upset that he starts banging on the counter. It dislodges a log, and then the log floats down, creates a little tiny bridge, and it leads to a little area to go and connect a banana bird. So all these banana birds in the game, they're all connected to the bears, as well as various methods of transportation, like the gyrocopter and stuff, and You definitely can go and collect them, but I have a tendency to just wait until the end of the game because by then I already have everything that I need, so I can just go collect them all and then go for the other ending. So for this level, they tried to do a... I'm not really sure what kind of correlation they were trying to do here. So we have this little tiny gauge on the side that when you destroy the rats, you know, well, if you destroy enough of the rats, it has a tendency to open the door. It doesn't really make a lot of sense because you would seriously think that these rats on these wheels would be powering the door to open up. And so right here I kind of make a mistake because I haven't played this game in so many years that I thought that, you know, that door in particular actually is opened by these two rats, when in regards to the rest of the level, you know, you have to go through it and then that door becomes accessible and you can run through it. But the way that they have the rats set up is really unusual because it's almost like saying, oh yeah, cutting the power actually, you know, opened the door instead, which was really, really oddball. So I wasn't really sure what they were trying to go for it. I mean, it's still a fun level. You know, I had like a lot of fun with it and stuff, and you know, this level does a good job of teaching you how to throw barrels and just use barrels in general. It feels kind of like a training area to a certain lesser extent. These beginning areas of the game, they all feel like they're training areas to a certain extent. So it's really weird how they do the collision for this game a fair bit. With the rat wheels, it feels like I have to land directly on the center. It doesn't feel like I can be a little bit left or right, which is really oddball because when you look at it, you kind of say to yourself, yeah, I should definitely be able to fit on it. And this isn't relegated to just the rat wheels either. Like later on in the game, there's going to be like waterfalls that we're going to have to go up as well, and the ledges for those waterfalls, they just feel really slippery, but it doesn't feel like an intentional slipperiness like what they did with the hive levels in Donkey Kong Country 2, where they felt intentionally sticky. With this, it kind of felt like they were rushing the game out the door a little bit. It definitely has a rushed feel to it. So the main issue that I had wasn't even so much that they tried new things with it. It's they go and they try things, but they don't really seem to function as they should a lot of the time. Like with the rat wheels, it's easy to slip off. With the cliffs, it's really easy to slip off. And then some of the cliff-based levels, taking Kitty with me is really, really hard because he doesn't jump very high. He's a very heavy, very weighty character, so, you know, unless you have both Kongs in those later levels, it feels like they're damn near not even doable, you know. It doesn't really particularly feel super good to go and play. So, as you can see, it's like you just go and you slip off, you know. It's just kind of rough stuff. It made a lot of these rooms, like, really unappealing and stuff. You know, like, I wasn't really the biggest fan. And, like, I know that I have to use this character a lot of the time because, you know, you're going to need him to throw things and everything else. So I try to go back and do these bonus rooms twice. I'm not terribly good at them, and I'm sure my vision doesn't really help things, but it just feels like some of these objects they want me to land on are super slippery, and it feels like it caters more to the female Kong in many ways because she can just hover and gently place herself down. So as you can see right here, this trapdoor is open, and what it does is when you jump on it, it leads you all the way down to the bottom. Now that all the rats are dead, the door is open. So they introduced this little tiny bird here, and to be honest with you, I don't really think that this is a terribly fun mechanic because it kind of makes the level in general a little bit more tedious. There's other levels later where you have to guide that bird throughout the entire level, and it's really hard because it's so easy to screw up a jump with it and then have it take damage and stuff. So I like this level as well. You know, they just kind of swapped up the color palettes and there's like a lot of jumping spiders. You know, I think that the jumping spiders are a little bit of a cute addition to Donkey Kong Country in general, and they're just like, they're not even an enemy. They're just like a little utility that helps you get to the upper levels and stuff, which is really, really nice, and I always thought that it was like really cute and stuff. You know, the sound effect for it was pretty cute as well, but I didn't have audio for the entire duration of this playthrough because I didn't really have any way of fixing it until I learned more about it. So those initial runs just had no audio for me to listen to, but they would have internalized audio that would be recorded. So Squawks makes a return, and he's still fun to use. He's a little bit more agile in this game. In Donkey Kong Country 2, he's agile with some things and really sluggish with others. But in this game, he's just agile all the way around, which I think was a really good move. You know, like I just kind of keep slipping off here. Just kind of makes me laugh a little bit. I noticed this shot around the bonus room barrels are a lot easier to find. With Donkey Kong Country 2, you had to do a fair bit of searching, and a lot of the time they were hidden in some pretty ingenious places and stuff, but it seems with Donkey Kong Country 3, they're more in your face, I want to say. You know, like they don't really try to hide them like super hard or anything. They're just kind of there a little bit off the beaten path, and so I feel that Donkey Kong Country 3 is a little bit easier to explore compared to 2. Like with 2, they had you use your brain more. You know, they were like, okay, well, you know, you can run through this wall as Rambi, you know, you can charge up and run through it. But with this one, they were kind of like, you know, oh hey, just go and, just go and, you know, go to the left a little bit and it's there. So Swanky's Sideshow is a all-new addition to Donkey Kong Country. It was done exclusively in 3. And the only thing you're doing is playing a series of mini-games to get bear coins and bananas. Your opponent is always Cranky. Sometimes the AI for Cranky is a little weird. Sometimes he's really bad, sometimes he's really good, and then sometimes you just have him be complete and utter god tier, which is really strange. I've had some matches where I've actually gone and done this, and he will just dominate. Like, he will move so fast, and just hit every single target. But this whole side game is a welcome distraction from the main game. I actually really enjoyed playing it when I was younger and stuff. I remember that I would actually go and, with my siblings, I would literally go and load up this particular mini game, and we would actually take turns to see who could get the better score, who could beat them faster, things like that. It was a really welcome addition to the game, I think, and it provides a really lovely attraction to it. So you just go and you get your bear coins and you get out of there. Like, they always give you 4 things of bananas and 4 coins, you know, it never goes up, it never goes down. You know, it's just always there, which is kind of nice. I mean, you could work up all the purchases at the bear shop, you know, using this method, but you're going to be sitting here for about like 2, maybe 3 hours doing it. But there's all kinds of varieties of mini games. Like, we've got head-to-head, we've got race to 25 and endurance. I find that head-to-head's probably my favorite. It's the one that takes the least amount of time a lot of the time. Head-to-head is pretty good in that regard. And then endurance is very frantic. Cranky has a tendency to move a hell of a lot faster. You know, race to 25, it can be kind of longish depending on how many, you know, throws you miss and stuff. But, you know, the mini games are done well and stuff. Every time you miss a shot, you know, it kind of feels like it's your fault, you know. So for this particular stint, I was trying to relax a little bit. Like I said, I actually enjoy this this little side mini game that they have here, and so for this run, I spent a lot of time doing it. There was a point where I actually forgot that I was doing the run and stuff. I got wrapped up in the mini game a little bit, and I was like, oh, you know, I'm filming this. I should probably get my ass back to work and, you know, start chugging down levels again. But it just kind of highlights how fun it is to play. You know, I really enjoy it a lot, and it's fun to just take a break here every now and then. I think it's really, really nice how they managed to squeeze Swanky in with this particular installment. I would have loved to see him do trivia again, like he did in the second game, but this one's just as cool, I feel. I feel it's more accessible for people as well, because not everybody was paying attention to the trivia minigame and stuff, but I feel like everybody can pick up and play this particular series of minigames and still have a really good time with it. So this is the bear that I was actually talking about. He goes and he gets super, super upset, and, you know, he only does this if you go and you beat his score for the race. If you come in here and you haven't beaten the score whatsoever, he's a hell of a lot nicer with things. And so, as you can see here, you know, he's going and he's hitting it so hard that he's managed to dislodge a log, and, you know, it goes and it floats down, creates a little bridge for you. And then after this level, you can go down to it, it'll reveal the cave and stuff, and you can go from there. So the gimmick with this particular level is that you're playing as the elephant, and then for this level you're learning how to go and not only draw water up into your trunk, but learning how to fire it afterwards. You also learn how to shoot barrels a little bit better as the elephant and stuff. It feels, again, like a training area. And then, much like the spider from the second game, you can aim up, you know, and like you have directional aiming. So you can do some pretty fun things, you know, like you can shoot a bird, they'll drop a barrel, and, you know, there's your bonus room. You know, like, I feel they just went full tilt with the elephant. You know, you can use the elephant to build bridges. I'm kind of goofing off here because I forgot this bonus room entirely. I thought you needed 3 barrels to actually cross the water when you only need 2, and so it kind of clicked after a while when I was like, wait a minute, these barrels aren't here, what am I doing wrong? You know, I was like, oh, this probably just takes 2. So, but The reaction time for the elephant's actually really, really nice and stuff, and they do a good job in this level as well of conveying what to do. You know, they'll just spell out a letter in bananas, and you look at your hand, you say, "Oh, okay," and it's very the training for this game is very subtle. I feel it's not quite in your face like modern games where they were like, "Oh, do this to progress." They just have you go and they're like, "Oh, it's a Y." And so you go, you look at your hand, you do it. But it kind of feels like intelligent game design. It's just not something we see a whole hell of a lot of anymore. So the fish that's in this level, he's very much so a rehash of Lockjaw, I feel, from the second game, where if you jump in the water, he's going to try to eat you immediately, so it kind of felt like they wanted the same concept, but they wanted to have a different fish entirely. I would have loved to see Lockjaw actually make a comeback. He is one of my favorite enemies from the second game. And then those beetles are literally a rehash of the other beetles, from the second game as well. Behavior and all, for the most part, you jump on them, they kind of lay on their back, and you can go and toss them and everything else. So that's what I mean when I say, hey, a lot of this is new, but it still feels a little bit familiar. But it feels like they took a lot of the familiar design and junked it, essentially. It doesn't really feel terribly great. So I'm not the greatest with the elephant at all. I hadn't played this game in so long that I actually forgot how to play, essentially. So a lot of this is literally me rehashing old memory and stuff, because I didn't really play this game as much as I played 1 and 2. I'm not super amazing at 1. I was actually pretty good at 2 before I lost most of my vision and stuff. And then 3, I would play it, but it wouldn't be like super regular like 2. 2 I was playing every week, like sometimes every other day. With 1, I would play it weekly, and then with this one, I would pop it in only if I was tired of 1 and 2. So it didn't really get as much love as all of the other titles that were played and stuff. So it's kind of a shame, because it does have a lot of original design and stuff. And I think that a lot of the design that they have is actually really, really gorgeous, per se. They did do a good job with it. A lot of it looks really, really amazing, given the fact that it's running on the SNES hardware. And they were still using the same computers to actually go and, render these games and stuff, so they still have that same aesthetic. So for these rooms, it's more like, it feels like Simon Says, more or less. Where you just have to go and replicate what you're seeing on the screen and stuff. And the weird thing is a lot of this is color-based, but the thing that I found was really strange is the color is based off of the Japanese SNES controller, because it actually has those colors on it, whereas the one for North America, it was like purple and a lighter purple. So I always thought it was kind of weird how they made those switches multicolored and stuff, forgetting that people outside Japan didn't have those controllers. So we have this boss here, and it's a giant spider, as you can tell. It keeps with the theme of having animals as bosses in Donkey Kong Country and stuff, and I actually really like it. I feel that it's an original design. I'm not really a huge fan of how he spits projectiles all over the place and how they bounce along the wall. And the one thing that I didn't really care for about this boss fight is it pretty much exclusively caters to Dixie. And so the weird thing about it is with Kiddy Kong, it doesn't really feel like, it's built for him because of the way that he carries barrels and stuff. With Dixie, you can just pick up the barrel, hold it above your head, and then when the spider comes down, pop him in his face, he takes damage. Everything goes on. But with Kiddy, since he holds it in front of him and then places his chin on top of it, he's not a character that launches barrels upward very well. So, well, really at all for that matter. So it feels like it's a lot harder to do with Kiddy, because he's not really directly built for this level. So now that we have the bandage, we can actually go back to Funky, and he will actually create a whole new vehicle for us, which is really nice. It's kind of an ongoing theme with this game, I think. So as you progress, you just collect parts, you bring them back, and he's like, oh, well, I'll build you something new, and then he'll build you something completely new that'll, like, traverse things like waterfalls, or go over rocks, or anything, really. You know, they try to keep it fresh, you know, as the game goes on and stuff. And the cool thing about the later vehicles is that you can use them for everything else, you know, so you don't have to be vehicle specific towards the end of the game. It's a really nice touch, and I think it cuts down on tedium. So the water levels don't really feel good, they don't really feel bad, they just kind of feel like they're there. A lot of the enemies in these levels, they kind of feel like they're more procedurally generated. You don't really have a lot of random stuff just kind of whipping at you. Which on one end I kind of like it because it allows me to kind of know what to expect with subsequent runs and stuff. But at the same time, you know, I kind of, in many ways, like, I kind of wish that it wasn't as formulaic, because once you kind of learn to expect it and stuff, you don't really, I don't know, it just kind of stops being exciting. Like, I feel that 2 kind of walked that line a lot better. Like, 1 would have too much random stuff, 3 doesn't have enough random stuff, and then 2, it would have random stuff, but you would be fast enough to dodge it, essentially. So it's one of those things where you kind of sit there, and, you know, 2, I feel, has much more of a balance to it, whereas 1 and 3 didn't really have as much of one. So I kind of like the theming with a lot of these water levels as well. I like how they keep shaking it up. Like with 2, a lot of the underwater levels were literally just in a pirate ship, like in the hold of a pirate ship. And then with Donkey Kong Country 1, there was like normally a lot of coral. But with Donkey Kong Country 3, there's like a lot of coral and various other growths and stuff. That's one thing I will give the entire DKC franchise, is they're always doing something new. You know, in terms of design, they're always doing something new. I mean, it's a little bit of a pain sometimes because I do want to see, like, certain designs come back with certain enemies and stuff. But at least they kind of sit down and they're like, okay, well, we want to do something new this shot around. And it really reflects in their design philosophy, I think, because you don't really, between the games, you don't really see a lot of reused stuff. Like, 2 had enough stuff to be familiar, which was really nice, but it had enough new stuff to feel really exciting when you play it. And then 3's kind of lopsided because they replaced a lot of stuff, and not too much of it really feels familiar or anything, which kind of sucks a little bit, because there are some enemies you do want to see come back. You know, and I feel with Donkey Kong Country 3, they just kind of said, you know, we have to absolutely keep it 100% different, you know, because if we don't, it's probably going to come back to bite us in the ass. I personally don't think it would have happened, but, you know, with the way that they've designed this, it certainly conveys that message, I think. So this is the first cliff level you're going to come across in the game. I find a lot of these ledges to be extremely slippery. I like what they did with the barrels this shot around. They're not only going to launch you, but they themselves launch as well, especially more towards the top and stuff, which is really, really nice. They turn them into little mini rockets, which I think is pretty cool. It's a nice little piece of design they did and stuff. So it's kind of like a mashup of having to travel to a higher area and then being shot out of it and having to steer your character into the next barrel as well. I actually liked that. It's a holdover from Donkey Kong Country 2, and I always thought it was a really good piece of smart design. But as you can see, it's really hard to go and steer Kiddy Kong, and as an end result, I got nailed in the ass by that bee wasp, whatever it's supposed to be. So the Buff Gator style of enemy actually makes a reprise from 2. He's got a completely different design, but it's like the same principle. You either need like a super heavy character to nail him through the floor, or you need a barrel to go and hit him with. So it's literally the same design principle, just a completely different aesthetic. As the level progresses, I feel that a lot of these segments really aren't meant for Kiddy. Like looking at the gap between the various bees and stuff, it just doesn't look like he would fit. Sometimes I would get lucky and I would get him to squeeze through, but it felt more like dumb luck instead of solid skill, I think. So it was this particular section of the game that actually really made me dislike the character, because I was slipping around on those ledges there, and then I would try to squeeze in between, the various gaps in the bees and stuff, and I just always kind of had like a hard time with it and stuff. The reason why I actually liked Donkey Kong Country 2 as much as I did was that the maps felt like they were built for both. If you had both Kongs, it felt like a bonus because you had access to bonus areas and stuff by using both of them in tandem with each other. But I feel with Donkey Kong Country 3, Kiddy's just really not meant to. Kiddy's not really meant to squeeze into all these gaps, and he's really not meant for a lot of these levels as well. And so the gameplay, while not painful, is definitely tedious, and it doesn't feel particularly great to play. I would have much rather had seen like another character. I don't mind heavy characters, but I feel compared to DK, Kiddy doesn't really do his role terribly well. The game doesn't really feel like it's built around him, except for like certain portions of the game. Like you can definitely tell that, like with these cracked floors and stuff, you can definitely tell that they were made for him. And then other areas of the game, you can definitely tell that there would be no way in hell that you would really be able to do anything with him, and it doesn't really particularly feel good. So I actually really liked these barrel enemies here. I thought that they were just the coolest thing ever. I noticed since Donkey Kong Country 2, they were trying to always have an enemy that the design philosophy was centered around it being some sort of barrel creature. Like with the second game, we had crocs, like various styles of crocs that would come out of the barrel and, run at you and stuff. And then this one, it seems like they're hanging out in the barrel, but there's just this really lanky pair of arms that just kind of comes out, and, they're just kind of rushing at you and stuff. And then they got that silly little face painted on the barrel as well, which I really appreciate. So this area in general, they just pretty much more or less did a palette swap, you know, in terms of color and stuff. You know, the buff enemy definitely makes a return and stuff. And as you can see right here, you know, you more or less need Kitty to go and sit on him, and then, you know, he's defeated. I like what they did with the rockets in this game. A lot of it is rehashed from the second game, but it was a mechanic I feel that was actually really good to rehash. The barrels don't really move too fast or too slow. You can use them as Kitty and stuff, but again, it just feels really sluggish. This area in general, even though it's got some segments that you need Kitty to actually progress with, if you want to get to some of the bonus areas, I feel that this area was more or less built for Dixie in general. I always thought it was like a real nice touch how when playing as the elephant, you can go and draw water directly from the waterfall and then use it as a bunch of projectiles. I also felt that it was a nice touch that you could hold multiple projectiles as well, so you could go for a fair bit between the various sources of water and you can still have projectiles. It feels really, really nice how they did it. Granted, I would have liked infinite projectiles and stuff, but I understand why they didn't do it. You know, I mean, I know that we had the spider from the second game actually have infinite projectiles and stuff, and it kind of made sense because he was like producing the web and stuff, whereas with the elephant, I think it makes more sense because the elephant, you know, it can't just hold this infinite reservoir of water inside of it, obviously, so it's a nice little attention to detail and stuff. I think that it could have gone south really fast if they would have made it to where it only holds like one or two shots, but for it to hold as many as it does, I think it's really, really nice and it lends itself to proper gameplay. I think it's another good touch how the projectiles can pretty much kill anything that runs in front of you. So with these levels, like, we see a lot of slowdown start to crop up, and I think it's mainly due to the water effects. Like, the SNES wasn't like super powerful or anything, you know, it had like a lot of slowdown on a lot of its games with it. But I think that we see them worse on Donkey Kong Country 3. Like, any of these engines that were like trying to push what looked like pseudo 3D models as 2D sprites. And so I think that it was just one of those things that this game in general kind of suffers with, because you go and you play the game and there's a lot of slowdown because they're trying to do so much with it. And on one end it's really nice because the game is absolutely gorgeous to go and look at, but on the other end, some areas that you need to have proper response with, they go and they bog down, and yeah, they only bog down for like a second or two, but sometimes it hurts how you jump and stuff. Like, you do need really good response time, I find, to play a lot of these games, and when you don't have that, it really just kind of damages the hell out of it. So with this level, moving on to this level since we're like 30 seconds into it, the whole premise is you take that asshole fish from the other level and you have to keep him fed. So you have to feed him all of the fishes. If you feed him any of these spiny urchins, you know, he gets angry, and, you know, if you feed him too many, then he'll just get super angry, turn around, decide to eat you instead. You know, they continue to do new things with the game and stuff, which is really, really nice. And with this one, I didn't really care for this gimmick too much because it feels kind of inaccurate. There's a lot of areas where I'll literally have this fish go to eat a clownfish, you know, that way I don't have to worry about him eating me, and instead he'll eat the he'll eat the urchin that's way the hell over on the other side of the screen. So it's a lot of this inconsistency, I feel, with this style of gimmick that really kind of holds it back. That's why sometimes, like, you'll see me turn my character just to get the fish in that area to go and eat the clownfish instead of accidentally wolfing down an urchin or anything. And it's just kind of a tougher thing, I think, especially when dealing with inconsistencies like that. There's even kind of like awkward points where if you go like too far ahead of him, he'll take damage, quote quote, and he'll go and eat like a bunch of urchins and stuff, even though you'll be sitting next to clownfish. Like, you literally can't afford to wander off screen with him. Essentially, it just doesn't really work. So for this run, I didn't really quite know why I was collecting the DK coins. I think it was more of a force of habit than anything else, you know? Like, you could just get used to playing the game and it's like, okay, collect all the coins you can. But, it was kind of weird because I caught myself thinking about it and it's like, wait a minute, you know, this isn't a 100% run, what am I doing here? Kind of thing, and, you know, I kind of laughed it off a little bit. So the gimmick for this boss fight is to literally avoid the water jet that he is going and spitting all over the place. I think it's some kind of crab. I want to say it's like some kind of crab or like maybe kind of like a mutant lobster or something, but basically the idea is to avoid the jet stream while spraying water in his eyes, and you pretty much just rinse, dry, and repeat until the boss themselves is defeated. It doesn't feel like it's terribly difficult or anything like that. I know when I was younger, I didn't have the timing for the elephant down pat, so I would go to jump and I wouldn't land quite right, and I would go and slip off the ledge and stuff. But even when I'm older with low vision and stuff, I can still do this boss fight pretty easily, and it feels oddly satisfying to go and defeat this boss, and like, I don't really feel like I struggle too much with it. So with Mechanos, it's pretty much the game's industrial zone that you can go through and stuff. It does a lot of cool things. It was one of my favorite areas. I like the industrialized look of everything. I like how they have those little miniature owls in the background holding what looks like cannons, shooting hot balls of molten metal at you and stuff. I really liked it. I liked how they continued to do new things with this game and stuff, and I think that the owls were just really, really cool, you know, and then they had you shimmying over like molten pools of lava and stuff and everything else, which is not something that we saw in DKC2. Like, I believe with DKC2 we had the whole, you know, just jump over the lava pools, but we weren't ever really shimmying like this or anything. It was either hot air balloons or barrels or, you know, something. So for them to take an old idea, say, hey, we can mix that up and stuff, is actually a really nice attribute for this game. And it's something that I've actually grown to appreciate quite a bit. But they have you do some light platforming and stuff. I feel that sometimes the timing on the platforms is a little bit off. Feels like you're going to get hit by a molten fireball, you know, so there's like a lot of bouncing and stuff that the platform actually does. And you got to be careful with it, I find. They do a really good job in this game conveying weight, much like they did in Donkey Kong Country 2. When you land on platforms and stuff, you know, they bounce a little bit. They feel kind of springy, which is really, really nice and stuff. And, you know, like with the way that they add how things feel to their game and stuff, it's really, really nice. It's something that I think that I've always enjoyed about Rare, you know? And so it's just nice to see that they continue to use what works, you know, and while offering new things. So, yep, I'm falling for the trap of collecting the DK coin again, you know, force of habit. I like how, as you progress through the level and stuff, the patterns that the molten balls are shot is constantly changed up, you know, it's either alternating or it's progressive or it's singular or sometimes it's a double, triple, you know, it's just really, really nice, I think. You know, I like how they tried to keep it fresh throughout these entire stints that you spend going through these levels and stuff. So as I progressed through the game, I had no idea why I kept going and visiting the bears. The item collection quest that you can do for them, believe it or not, is not mandatory. It's literally a side spiel that you can go and do all on your own, and it doesn't really do much. So I thought it was kind of cool how this level takes place in a drain pipe. The only thing I didn't really like about this too much is once it really gets going, it becomes hard to see what's coming up. So I struggled actually kind of heavily with a lot of this level. Like, I died a lot on this level. It was really weird how they chose to do the spacing for the pipes as well. Like, I would have put them, I think, a little bit further apart and stuff to accommodate how fast that toboggan is going. And so this isn't one of my favorite levels. I like the design of it, like I like how it looks, but I don't really like how it plays and I don't really like how it feels. So it really felt like a lot of it was just kind of thrown together and stuff, and I didn't really care for it too much. With the game being in a 4:3 aspect ratio, you know, you need pretty good reflex and stuff. A lot of this I think would boil down to just memorizing where everything is at, which is something that we saw with a lot of older games, a lot of older platformers and a lot of older action games. But with this, it's like I didn't really play it enough to really remember all of it. Like with Donkey Kong Country 2, I can pretty much remember the timing for damn near all of the game, but with this one I didn't really play it a super huge amount. So when it came to like doing these little racing bits and stuff, I wasn't terribly good at it. You know, I would just kind of do it to the best of my ability to try to go and make my way through it and not really worry about it too much. I think the hitboxes for a lot of things in this level doesn't really feel right either. You know, some things that you feel like you should bounce off of, you just take damage and you die instead. I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of these pipe-based levels just never really felt right to me. Even the ones where you don't really race, the way that they progress and the way that they have your character going and advancing through it doesn't really feel that great, you know. So a lot of it, like I said, is just boiling down to basic memory of where everything is at. And I think one thing that they could have done a little bit better with this level, I feel, is they could have used bananas to guide you a little bit better and stuff, and I think it would have just felt better in the long run, especially when you start like moving super fast and stuff, and it just feels kind of rough, I think. I just feel it just could have been done a little bit better. The level itself is not a complete and utter wash, but man, it feels rough. It feels like it didn't really go through a lot of playtesting, I think. So I had to go back and do this level quite a few times. Like I said, I was pretty bad at it and stuff. It was a weird combo of being bad at it, not being able to see a lot of it because a lot of this blurred together. I think one of the big issues that I had is since everything is supposed to be one solid color of pipe, a lot of it just kind of blends together, so a good portion of it, aside from not really having much of a memory for this game, a good portion of it is blending it all together as well. It just feels kind of rough and stuff, and I kind of appreciate the level for what it is. I just wish it was a little bit more accessible, I feel, as a gamer and such. So Ripsaw Rage was actually really good. It was keeping with the theme of environmentalism a fair bit, which I really liked, especially with the theme of logging and stuff. Around the time this game came out, it was actually kind of interesting because the hot button topic was logging that was going up in Washington and stuff, you know. The question that everybody was kind of asking at the time is like, how much is too much logging, what is sustainable, things like that. So I thought it was actually kind of interesting that Rare, being a developer from across the pond, you know, they're based out of the UK, you know, they actually go and they make these levels like this where there's a giant saw blade going and chasing you up and down. I didn't really care for the bonus areas for this level too much. They feel kind of tedious, and then having to use Kiddy Kong on top of it just didn't really feel great. You know, with as chunky as his jumps feel and stuff, it really just didn't really feel like it. It didn't really feel like it fit too well, essentially. So I didn't really like. I got it done. You know, the area was complete and stuff, but it didn't really feel good. You know, like it didn't really feel gratifying. It just kind of felt laborious and stuff. It really makes me wonder, like, if Rare ever sat down and actually kind of looked at how the character handled and stuff. I know that they were diverting a lot of the team at the time to go and work on other projects. You know, with the N64 coming up and everything else. You know, like I knew they were kind of running around with a stripped down staff and stuff, but it felt like a lot of this stuff really just kind of needed revision. You know, like it needed to have somebody else, like a fresh set of eyes, look at it and be like, okay, you know, is this or is this not functional? So I enjoy playing through this level a lot more as Dixie. I feel, you know, she's just way more agile and stuff, and I would have been all in favor of having Kitty as a character completely scrapped. I would have loved to see like another character or a rehash of Diddy pop in this game as well, you know. I would have been down for either or, having a whole new character or having Diddy reprise his role and stuff. They were a pretty good team in Donkey Kong Country 2, and I felt that as characters they complemented each other very much because, you know, Diddy Kong was like really fast. And then Dixie, she was pretty fast as well, but not as fast as Diddy. You know, Diddy was better on ropes and stuff. So this is another pretty cool level. They basically are keeping with the industrial theme and stuff, except now we have these little buggers here going and shooting barrels at you, and so the gimmick for this one is using the barrels, well, dodging the barrels first and foremost, and then later on using them as a mode of transport, as you can see here. So the type of barrel varies, you know, like you have metal barrels and then you have exploding barrels and then you have the standard wooden barrel. The thing that makes this level kind of interesting is that there are some sections of it where you'll have to take the exploding barrel, and there will be a little switch for you where you can go and change it to like a wooden barrel. That way, when you go to use it as a mode of transport, you know, you don't accidentally blow up and die and have to restart the level or lose a Kong. Or so this is that switch that I was talking about. So now we would go and just head over to the oh geez, head over to the other side and stuff. And sometimes the switch sticks, sometimes it doesn't. You know, common sense would say use Dixie at this point and then just helicopter across, but common sense was kind of off duty that day. So my brain was just really, really tired. I was filming it at like 2:30 in the morning, and you know, stuff was just not firing on all cylinders. So I make a bunch of really stupid mistakes right here because I just don't use my brain for any of it. But when you're tired, you know, and I didn't expect this game to take as long as it did. I really, really underestimated it. I was like, okay, I'm going to be playing this game for like an hour and a half. And instead I wound up doing this run, I think, in like 3 hours, 15 minutes. And it's mainly because I get stuck in certain segments. But with all of the other, as with all the other long plays that I had done, I wanted to rise to the challenge, and I wanted to say, hey, you know, we can do this, you know, mistakes and all, and it's just, there's something gratifying about going and having like a really kind of like a hard time with the game, and then going and actually beating it and stuff. It's very much so in line with the Dark Souls philosophy of gaming, where it's like through struggle, you know, you get gratification. So it feels good to beat games like this. So they tried to do something new with the pipe levels here. We're going to see a derivative of this level later on. But basically it's a low gravity chamber and stuff, and it's actually a lot funner than what it looks like. It's really, really fun to just slowly float up, and it can be kind of nerve-wracking to slowly float up when you see an enemy coming at you full stop like this. But the level itself actually has like a lot of fun mechanics and stuff. I like how a lot of the enemies are just moving super duper sluggish, and it's just kind of a funny thing. It kind of reminds me of certain segments of DKC2, you know, where they try to slow things down a little bit, and it's nice to see that they tried it again with DKC3, you know, and I just really, really liked that a lot, I think, and it just feels really silly, you know, like you don't really take it too seriously, you know, you're going to be making slow-mo jokes the entire time, you know, and I just really liked it, I think. So we actually have the high precision style of level actually makes a comeback, much like what we saw with Squawks in the areas of DKC2 where you have to go through the hive and it's kind of like a high precision level. It actually makes a comeback with this one as well, because of the aspect ratio of the game. You know, you can't really always see what's directly above or below or even in front of you, so you have to take your time with it and you have to do it right. They try to soften the blow, I think, with this level a fair bit by having Squawks go and carry a barrel, and you can use it to kill the bees and stuff, and it's really, really nice, I think. Granted, they don't always give you a barrel, but I think it's interesting how they give you the option of who you destroy with the barrel, because if you're fast enough, you can actually go through it destroying nobody, but if you're kind of struggling with it, they give you the option of picking up the barrel, as you can see there, and then just going and floating through with it and stuff. And I like how thoughtful they were with this particular level in general, you know. I think it's actually kind of funny how, even though I'm in a low gravity style level, I think it's really funny how they actually go and keep the agility of squawks a fair bit. I just thought it was always one of those little oddities, you know, and it's like, you know, my Kongs are moving slow, the enemies are moving slow, why the hell is Squawks moving fast? But I think that it was a piece of design that actually worked out for the better, because I feel that having him move super slow in this level would have just been just totally horrible. It would have not worked, I think. So this boss right here kind of keeps with the industrialized inanimate object boss that you typically see every now and then in the game. I actually really like this boss a fair bit. I think it's kind of silly how he's got like a tape recorder that runs him and stuff. Well, it's not even so much a tape recorder, it's more like a reel-to-reel. And so I really like how they actually did that. The only thing that I didn't really care for a super huge amount is sometimes jumping on these blades is very touch and go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm fine with the boxing gloves popping out of the sides and stuff and everything else, but it feels like those blades are just really slippery sometimes, you know. And I remember when I was younger, it'd be kind of a constant pain in my ass, because I would just be like, oh man, you know, I'm constantly failing to this, but with some practice you can get around it. So eventually his helmet does come off, and it will start to shoot lasers and stuff at you, which is really interesting. It's an interesting little dynamic because the helmet in general is rather quick. It's a lot quicker than you would expect it to be. The easiest way to get around it is literally to just run all over the arena and stuff, and then he comes back down with his blades again, and you know, it's just a really interesting boss and stuff. And then you have the silliness that is literally just him going and wearing a thing of shades with those goofy teeth and everything, you know. Kind of gives it dude bro energy a little bit, which I always felt was kind of silly and stuff. So we're ready to make another vehicle, you know, and the game does a pretty good job of telling you when it's time to explore and move on, because of the pacing that they have when it comes to like giving you parts and stuff. So I always think it's pretty cool when you come back and Funky's always like really excited. He's like, I can make you something new, and then, you know, he comes back with something new, and it's just a really nice touch, and I love how lighthearted it is. So with this one, it's the main idea behind it is it goes up waterfalls very easily, you know, and you can pretty much go over rocks as well with it. Like I said, any upgraded vehicle you use, all the stuff below it, it's going to be able to do. So these cliff levels, I loved them and I hated them. On one end, they're pretty fun. I feel that Kitty kind of excels in this particular level in general. He's just a lot better when it comes to shimmying across ropes. I think it probably has something to do with the fact that he looks like he's worked on arm day every day of his life compared to missing out on leg day pretty much every day. So it's really fun to actually go through with these levels as Kitty, and I feel that Kitty as a character kind of shines a little bit on these levels. But the thing is he only really shines on levels like this. A lot of the other levels he kind of struggles with. But it's nice to see that he actually has levels that he can go and excel in, because it helps prevent the character from feeling like they're completely and utterly useless. So Dixie can do these levels as well, but I feel that Kiddy Kong's a little bit faster with it, you know, like he has a much easier time outrunning the barrels and stuff. And then I'm getting chased all over hell and back with this barrel, and, you know, we just kind of transition from rope to rope and stuff, and it feels really good. You know, it feels as it should, you know. So I continue to advance here, and it's like one of the few instances where I actually have fun as Kitty. I don't really like how that enemy just comes whipping at me and stuff at that point. It doesn't really particularly feel great. I wish that they would have panned out the camera just a little bit so we had a little bit more time to actually go and jump up and, you know, go from there. But I can understand that, like, these games were built for, you know, picture tubes and stuff, and they were trying to keep everything as legible as possible because big TVs really weren't quite the thing back then. I mean, the biggest most people had were like 32 inches. If you're lucky, you had like a 50 inch. Most people just owned like a 21 inch. So I didn't really care for this racing segment either. It feels really weird. Like the pacing for the entire level feels kind of off a little bit in terms of like bouncing off of enemies and trying to get on ledges and stuff. It doesn't really feel like it was done super well. And then like the toboggan itself is actually moving really, really quick. So it feels like in some areas that they kind of punish you for bouncing off the enemy. So you go, you jump at the toboggan, you land on the enemy and stuff, and then by the time you actually land on the ground, you know, you don't have enough time to jump over the gap and stuff. So it feels like a lot of this wasn't really well thought out super well, you know. So I feel that Rare kind of knew that from the other two games that they knew that the player base would be conditioned to just jumping and bouncing off of enemies every chance they got. And so when I would go and I would try to jump on a lot of the enemies in this level instead of avoiding them, it felt like the game itself would punish the hell out of you for doing so. So a lot of these trips to these bonus barrels are purely accidental. You know, that's all they are. I had no desire to go to this bonus level. The main thing is that it basically stems from me screwing up firing the cannon. Instead of killing me, it just shot me to a bonus room instead. So I had to try a lot with this particular level in general because it just doesn't really feel like it has really good pacing and stuff, which is actually kind of oddball for me. You know, like you go and you look at it and you're kind of like, oh man, you know, why is this like this? And so I wasn't really a super huge fan, per se. So the chunky snow kind of makes a comeback, and so it makes it kind of hard to see and stuff because everything's like blurred and bigger than what it's supposed to be, so it causes a lot of overlap. And so I was actually really disappointed to see them using it again, and I'm sure that it's just them recycling assets and stuff from like all the other games, but it's just not something I particularly cared for and stuff. It kind of made me struggle a lot harder than what I had to, I feel, with this game. So it was at this point in the game that I kind of sat down and asked myself whether or not I wanted to actually edit all of the runs for this particular level out, because I kind of felt like the run itself was taking on a lot of bloat, and I didn't really care for that too much. So the main issue that I had was I like to actually go and dump these in a raw format with really minimal editing. Most of the time I just go chop the ends off to make the run look clean, and then I have a tendency to keep all of my mistakes and stuff because it kind of gives it a sense of accomplishment a little bit when you kind of go back and you look at it and you're like, yeah, you know, I went ahead and I struggled through it, but at least I made it through. But some of the levels in this run were just like so rough that I was sitting there and I was like, okay, well, this run is a hell of a lot longer than what it should be, at this point. Should I go and edit it out, for the sake of keeping the upload small and, just going and doing the best to try to make it look clean. And I eventually kind of came to the conclusion that I just didn't want to do it because with all the other videos, I had already established the fact that I like showing off all the mistakes I make and stuff. I feel a lot of content creators, they go out of their way to try to make the gameplay look as perfect as possible. And I always felt that it was kind of deceiving, to a certain lesser extent, because you go and, you think that they're just this MLG kind of god gamer and stuff and that they don't make mistakes. A lot of people on YouTube kind of feel like that, I feel, when they look at a lot of the larger influencers and stuff that go and make this content. But with me, I kind of like to leave the mistakes in because I feel that it gives it a sense of journey and accomplishment, and then it's something that we can all laugh at later, I think. I like to actually laugh at my mistakes a fair bit because I feel that if you take them too seriously, I feel that it kind of damages you a little bit, like some people take their mistakes super seriously and they're super hard on themselves and stuff. I like to laugh at mine a fair bit because I feel that it's important to be able to laugh at yourself as a human being, Like, it's important to be able to laugh at the things that matter and stuff. So when I do these runs, it's like, yeah, I'm kind of, pardon my French, but I'm kind of fucking up left and right, but it's still funny and, we can laugh at it, we can discuss it. There's all kinds of things you can do with it, and, So I think that's why I choose to keep a lot of the mistakes in these runs and stuff. I mean, yeah, it's going to add 40 minutes to the overall timer and stuff, and it's not going to have the cleanliness of like a flawless speed run or anything like that, but I wanted to do something different that I didn't really see anybody else doing. Like, I don't really see a lot of people just keeping their mistakes and saying, hey, I fucked up here. So I decided to make it a theme of these runs in general, and I feel that it's gonna pan out for the better, And then, of course, still collecting the goddamn DK coins, even though I'm never going to collect all of them. Not on this run, at least. So they kind of go, and this was one of the more irritating levels that I have actually played. They went ahead and they rehashed a cliff level and stuff, except this time there are barrels that are slowly floating down the waterfall. And so the gimmick with this particular level is you gotta jump on them, sometimes in rapid succession, to make it to the next platform of where you're going. I didn't really like this because it was not really geared towards Kitty at all. He is way too heavy to be doing a lot of the acrobatics that they want to do. I mean, it can be done, but it definitely favors like Dixie's lightweight and stuff and her ability to helicopter from point A to point B. This level in many ways feels like that it was built for her. And so every single time I would go and be forced to use Kitty, I would literally be like, okay, I'm kind of expecting failure, and I'm kind of expecting to have to go back to a previous checkpoint and stuff, and I wasn't really feeling it. Using him in this level actually feels really laborious. It doesn't feel good to do, which I think is kind of one of the worst things that you can do in a game. Like, anytime the game starts to feel like work, I feel like it kind of starts to defeat the purpose of playing a game in general. So I wasn't super excited about doing this with Kiddy Kong at all, and it felt really, really rough. And then by the time I got Dixie, I was like, I'm already here as Kitty, I might as well say to hell with it and just continue going, So I actually like this level quite a bit. It's actually a lot of fun. I'm just really bad at it. The thing that's actually kind of cool is, okay, so we get the spider, and you know he's a lot more. I feel that he's done a lot better in this game because the inconsistencies with the web are largely gone in terms of like making platforms and stuff and everything else. So the gimmick for this game is, as you can see, there is a reticle on the screen, and you basically got to get out of the crosshair, you know. So you have to spend the entire level just doing a lot of platforming and dodging the crosshair and stuff. And they give you little tiny breaks in between, especially with like those dented up little shields that they have that you can hide behind and stuff. And I feel that the pacing for this level is done really well. On top of it, you know, they do a really good job using the bananas to try to guide you and stuff because they're expecting you to go and have a certain speed with this level, and it shows, especially with the speed that they actually fire the molten ball at you and stuff. And so I think that they actually hold the player's hand when it's needed, but at the same time they also expect a fair bit out of the player as well. You know, like they go and you know they want to have like really good platforming in this level, and it's really really nice. You know, like it doesn't really, the level never really feels like it's too much or too little. It always feels like it's just the right amount. The platforming with the spider doesn't feel as tedious this shot around, you know? Like I'm way more confident in the little tiny web balls that I'd be shooting to make platforms and stuff. They have a slightly longer lifespan this shot around, I noticed as well. Like with Donkey Kong Country 2, they would actually kind of disappear a little on the quickish side. With DKC 3, they have a little bit more of a lifespan to them, which is actually really, really nice, and it's something that I appreciate because it gives me a little bit of time to plan my next move and stuff. And when you have low vision, you kind of have to take a minute to figure out how to progress, and so for the extra time to be on that web ball is actually really, really nice, and it's something I greatly appreciate. But I think it's actually kind of nice how to try to keep things fresh. They, for a lot of these levels, they go and they swap up the color palette and stuff, and you know they do a really good job with it. Like they wanted to keep everything as original as possible, and it's something that I can respect, especially these days with like so much rehashed content from most modern games in general. So I didn't really care for this level too much because right off the bat they kind of hit you with chunky snow, and then you go and it's like clear for a little bit. I felt that with as fast as these little buggers were popping out of the holes and stuff, I didn't really appreciate it that much. It doesn't really feel like it has really good pacing either. The way that the enemies are set up, it feels like they're moving too fast for you to consecutively just bounce off of them. So it felt like, you know, I would either have to not bounce or skip whatever enemy was coming at me entirely. You know, like it didn't really feel like it had like a really good flow to it, which unfortunately a lot of this game kind of suffers from that. Like it doesn't really have that buttery smooth flow that we saw in 1 and 2. You know, they tried to screw around with how fast things move, and it just didn't really feel good. You know, oh, grateful for that metal barrel respawn since I can't shoot barrels for shit apparently. So this boss was a little bit interesting. The funny thing about it is I completely and utterly fucking forgot how to do this boss fight, so I wound up taking my licks. Had to remember, how to throw long-range snowballs and stuff, and then the boss is also really fast on top of it. And he's not a bad boss. I actually kind of like how inventive this boss is. He's actually pretty fun to fight against and stuff. It just took me a hot minute to remember how the hell to do the boss, and I just thought that it's not something we'd ever seen in Donkey Kong Country before, a friggin' snowball fight with a killer snowman and stuff, which I always thought was pretty unique, and then of course he's kind of an asshole towards the end where he just constantly taunts you if you don't hit him and stuff. It definitely feels like an exercise in futility sometimes, but, it's still pretty playful and stuff. He kind of has that attitude a little bit as well, where he kind of gets this this look on his face, that kind of says you're screwed, and then later on he just kind of goes and he fires a bunch of snowballs out of his hat and stuff, which I always thought was really interesting because they tried to make various patterns out of it and stuff, which I feel that they did a good job with. So we're getting up towards the end here, and the only thing that really changes is the speed doubles, and so a lot of the patterns are still the same in regards to how he shoots the snowballs and stuff, but he's just a lot quicker about it, and there's a little bit of planning needed. But you have to be quick on the draw with your snowballs as well, because he kind of taunts you a lot faster on top of it, so it makes it kind of hard to hit that medallion on his chest and stun him, So I always thought it was kind of interesting how he kind of shakes himself to death. This boss also reminds me of another character from a game called Clay Fighter, which also popped up on the SNES. I always thought it was kind of interesting how it has a striking resemblance to that character as well. So I didn't really care for this area too much in general. I feel that a lot of these levels actually suffer kind of horribly, and I really hated the boss for this area as well. And a lot of these areas have really, really bad pacing issues, and it doesn't really feel good to play a lot of these levels in general, and then the final boss left a lot to be desired as well. I consider the final boss for this area to be the weakest boss out of all of DKC 3. It just didn't really feel like it was planned and programmed really well and stuff. And then with a lot of these levels, they want you to do a lot of precision maneuvers, which really isn't so much of an issue, but it kind of comes into a bigger issue of sorts because of the way that you can see things above and below you. Sometimes you can see what's below you kind of decently and stuff, and you can plan accordingly. But other times they want you to move super duper fast, and you can't always do that with limited knowledge of what's above or below you. So the cave levels in general really just were not my favorite. I think that some of the enemies are kind of unique, like the helicopter croc was really just a fun character in general, like a croc going and being the propulsion system going and spinning around and stuff, and wearing a helmet with a goofy look on his face. I always thought it was pretty silly. I didn't really like how they did the pacing for them. Sometimes they're really fast, other times they're really slow. I feel as an enemy they kind of lack consistency. and it doesn't really feel that great. But these enemies actually become more common towards the end of the game, so you're going to have to be, dealing with them regardless. So it's a clear-cut case of sucking it up, I feel. You know. So I don't even know why I came back to do this bonus level. Again, I think it's like more of a force of habit, because even though I don't really ever go and cash in all the coins unless I'm doing a 100% run, I just like going and doing these little side bonus levels because it kind of feels like it adds to the overall gameplay value, which I think is what Rare was actually kind of shooting for with the inclusion of these. I mean, we've had them since DKC, but I think that 2 and 3 do the bonus levels the best. 2 does it a little bit better than 3 in some regards, and then 3 does some things better than 2. So it feels kind of weird in that regard. It's kind of touch and go with a lot of things. Another thing that kind of screws with me a little bit in regards to the helicopter crocs is that it feels like the game at times kind of struggles with the animation. Back when I was playing this on SNES, I noticed that the worst slowdown came with a lot of the animations for these copter crocs. And it feels really weird, because you go and you're going and you're looking at them and it seems really simplistic, but in later levels, especially when you start peeling through the later cliff areas and stuff where these guys are more common, it seems like the game kind of slows down to a crawl a fair bit. And it's kind of weird because typically with slowdown, it would occur with either a lot of enemies, or a lot of the times the slowdown would also occur if there was a lot of effects on the screen, but I found that the game would slow down to a crawl with just this one enemy on the screen a lot of the time, and it was really, really bizarre because, you kind of get a 360 degree view, which doesn't really sound revolutionary, but there's just something with it that actually causes the game to just creep so hard. And so I never really understood it and stuff, because sometimes, like with like a lot of the bosses and stuff, we would have way more dynamic animations and stuff, and they'd be way more detailed, but with these guys it just seems very, very simplistic, so I never really understood how the hell they could cause the game to slow down like that. And it was something that I think that I always kind of pondered a fair bit. god, the Copter Croc was such an asshole for that. So normally with this bear, if you actually go and bring his tools back, what he'll do is actually fix the lift, and it leads to a banana bird up at the top. So, but with this run, I decided to just not go and get any of the items at all. I didn't really like the tedium of it. Like I said, I've never really been a huge fan of mass item collection style games. So I'm sure that at some point I'm going to be doing a 100% run, but it's certainly not going to be this one. So this level is very much so reminiscent of the creeping floor levels that we saw with DKC2, except instead of a giant creeping floor, you have a rope that's on fire, and you have to constantly be progressing upwards and onwards to avoid death. The main issue that I had with this level is sometimes things pop out of the top so fast that you don't really ever have time to go and respond to them. So this level is largely reliant on memory, you know, like how well your memory is for this area and stuff, how well you can memorize where everything is at. And so I kind of struggled with it a fair bit because with my initial runs I would have to be really close to the top to stay away from like the rope and stuff, but the issue with that is the closer you get to the top, the more susceptible you are to random enemies just popping out from the top and damaging you. So I was never really a huge fan of, you know, how far you had to creep towards the top. There are other little things that it has you do as well, like they make you exhibit a fair amount of skill when it comes to going and having to maintain in a tight space for like a long time, you know, to be able to progress, because sometimes there'll be enemies above and below you, and so you can't quite go up to the top, you can't quite hang out at the bottom and stuff, so they relegate you to staying in like these little tiny boxed positions and stuff. Like right here, for example, you know, I kind of failed a fair bit there, got hit, you know, but you have to stay in that space until you get enough room up top to progress, but you can't go down too far to give yourself that breathing space because the rope is always on fire and it's always advancing in that regard. So they give you little things to help you and stuff. A lot of barrels and stuff give you a hand. There's actually a lot of side areas built into the literal sides of this area as well, which is actually really, really nice. But I don't ever, for this run, I didn't ever bother to go and get any of them, because again, it was just supposed to be me playing the run quite literally in a fashion of any percent. And so I just wanted to go through and enjoy the game without too much tedium, essentially. So they try to do, with this level, they try to use bananas to actually convey what you should do and stuff. And it's a little rough, you know, like you go and you're trying to go and you're trying to get through it and stuff, but it feels kind of like a tougher thing, and then you have enemies kind of coming at you, and it feels kind of like a high tension area a little bit, you know, because you're trying to make it through without taking damage, and then you're trying to stay in certain relegated spaces, like right here, you know, and you can't quite go up because you'll get hit by a copter croc, but you're grossly aware of how close you are to the bottom. You know, the level in general forces you to get better at spatial awareness, which is really nice. And I always thought it was kind of interesting how towards the end of the game, Rare always had you trying to get better. You know, they were like, okay, we're going to introduce new things and you're going to have to get better at it. And I thought it was really interesting compared to the other games where they were like, okay, we're going to have a little bit of stuff for you to learn at the beginning, and then after that, just apply it to the rest of the game. So I was really grateful for this level in general. I thought when I had first saw this level, I thought it was going to be like the lanternfish, where it's kind of flashing all over the place, as well as the Squawks level from the first game where he's going and carrying that lantern around and stuff. I was actually pretty happy that they took feedback and they were like, yeah, you know, that's an epilepsy hazard, you know. So for this one, what they did was they made it to where you just stab the fish, it lights the area, and that's pretty much it. You know, I'm really grateful for how this game chose to actually do the light levels, which is really, really nice. I feel that it makes it infinitely more accessible, you know, because now instead of going and flashing all over the place, you know, to see and stuff, you can just literally go poke a fish, and they go and they light up the area for a limited time, and then of course you're going to be going and fighting clownfish and everything else while you're down here. This is one of my more favorite water levels, I think. It's got pretty good pacing for it. It feels more like it was built for it in many ways, you know, like it felt like you were meant to take it a little bit more slowly and stuff. I mean, you have the agility, you know, but you don't really have the need to use it, more or less. You can just kind of go through at a sluggish pace and really enjoy it and stuff. The amount of light fish that they actually stick in this portion of the game is really, really good, I think. You never really feel like you're going too long without one. So the level in general, even though I'm kind of flopping at it, it doesn't feel like this really horrible struggle bus, you know. So it's just fun to just mosey through this level, you know, whoop up on a bunch of clownfish, and then you got like little urchins all over the place, and you know, you can kill them too, but I always felt it was kind of a pain in the ass. It was like a 50-50 shot. I always thought that was kind of funny how even though I'm not in stabbing direction of that one clownfish, he runs into my ass while I'm going and thrusting, and he manages to actually take lethal damage from it. Always kind of laughed at that a little bit. There's just like little oddities to this game. Some of them are really, really funny, and then others are just kind of aggravating, and I think that's why I always viewed Donkey Kong Country 3 as kind of a mixed package, because it was a little bit of everything, and unfortunately the negative stuff kind of outweighed the positive stuff, and while it's still a good game, I feel it's not quite up to the quality that 2 kind of had. You know, like it felt like there was more quality in 2 because they paid more attention to what was going on. With 3, it kind of felt like a lot of areas were just thrown together, and I don't really feel like a lot of your game should feel like that, essentially, when you're going and developing it. You know, there should be a certain level of cohesion with the game, and 3 lacks a lot of it. You know, like it really, like when you pay attention to it, it wants to be an item collection game. It kind of wants to have open world tendencies. It wants to goof around with alternate endings. It wants to go and have bonus levels. But the weird thing is with the alternate endings, it's literally wrapped up in bonus levels and a giant collectathon, as well as you know, going and having to put in the time for that. You know, you have to go and you have to be aware of where all these items are at, you know, and it gets kind of tedious tracking it all, because you got to keep track of vehicle items, banana birds, multiple types of coins, various items that the bears sell, where those items have to go. I mean, it felt like they didn't really, you know quite what they wanted the game to be. You know, is it a collectathon? Is it a standard platformer game? you know, what is it exactly? And I feel that the game kind of suffers kind of horribly with it, and it kind of sucks because I really wanted to enjoy this game more than what I did. So it's really kind of interesting because I go back and I play 2, you know, and I just kind of smile a lot more. But with 3, I start off smiling, and then halfway through I start grunting, you know, like this look of disgust, you know, and well, not so much disgust, just disappointment. And it's just really, really weird because they knew what worked with 2. You know, they definitely knew what worked with 2. They knew what made 2 a hit and stuff, and they just didn't really carry enough of it over to this new game. Yeah, stab that fish. There goes that damn clownfish running into my ass again. Yeah, I get kind of stuck there for a little bit. All that stabbing wasn't intentional. It's just with Ungarde, if an enemy gets close, well, if anything that they can stab gets close, they have a tendency to just stab the hell out of it. You know, it's like I kind of trapped between the fish and the wall there. So this level was a little bit interesting. It really reminds me, strangely enough, of the Vine level from the second game, except with this one there's no lethal thorns all over the place, but you're definitely using squawks to fly around a bunch of heavy-ass primates, and so you get that same sense of weight that you get with the second game and stuff. And then with this particular level, they also wanted you to do a lot of high precision maneuvers as well, which I always felt was really interesting. So I always, when I go and I look back at this level, it kind of reminds me that, you know, yeah, they're still trying to do new things and stuff, but at the same time, I look at it and I realize that some of it is rehashed, even though the area's got like a new color and different types of enemies in it and stuff, and like they keep shaking it up. And then, like, this is also where we meet the barrel monster that actually throws the bombs, and they can be a real huge pain in the ass as well, because some of them, like you'll notice, there's holes in the ceiling. Some of them will throw bombs that will pop out of those holes in the ceiling, and they'll just nail you out of nowhere. And I wasn't really ever a huge fan of that. Like, a lot of the times in this level, I would just kind of be walking along, minding my own goddamn business, and get tagged with a bomb. You know, there's a lot of variety in this level as well. You know, it's got like land monsters, aquatic monsters, and stuff, and it's really, really nice. I mean, it's not the best level out of the whole game, but I can still appreciate what's here, I think. You know? So they have you transitioning from water to land a fair bit, and there's all kind of little hidden things to go and find, and they got creative with this level, I think. Oh god, look at how slow they are. I think another nice attribute is how often you transition. You know, like, they have you on your toes for a lot of this level, and I think it's actually kind of nice. Oh, God, I hate those damn things. And now we're on to the spooter. Oh, that slow down though. Oh, jeez. Yeah, like every time we get one of these helicopter crocs on the screen, it seems like the game just slows down so much. It was kind of weird because at first I thought it was a side effect of the emulator. And then I had to go and I had to ask my sister. I was like, yeah, you know, did these levels slow down on original hardware? We had to go back and check, and yeah, slower than Moses, man. It was pretty horrible. So this level is kind of a stereotypical cliff climbing level and stuff. There's not really a lot of super unique stuff to it. It's literally just traverse the ropes and dodge the bees, essentially. I thought it was really, really interesting and stuff at first, and then I was like, you know, this is kind of formulaic. So there really isn't much to say about this level. It's got a bunch of tight platforming sections that are greatly reminiscent from the summer camp levels where they ran ropes like this as well. You know, and so they kind of make a reprise, and then they try to mash it up with the cliff aesthetic as well, and you know, they create something original with it. But as far as gameplay, they don't really try to introduce anything new. You're just kind of going through the motions, I feel, you know, just trying to survive while making it from platform to platform. And strangely enough, for this level, while it's kind of mundane, it strangely enough works. It actually works for it, which is kind of nice, you know, especially this late in the game. And the difficulty kind of has like a slow progression as it builds. You know, like later on they have you doing all kinds of crazy stuff in this level, and then the bees, of course, they pick up speed. And you know, like that's one thing I always kind of admired with Donkey Kong games, is a lot of the levels, they kind of start off slow and then they climax, and then the following level would follow the same suit, so you would actually have time as a player to get used to it. You'd be like, okay, this is what we can expect. And then later on they'd be like, okay, it's time to pretty much put everything into action, you know, like everything you learned and stuff. So every level is kind of like that to a certain extent. The reason that I die on this level as much as I do is because it largely boils down to impatience. I can be very impatient with a lot of the platforming segments for a lot of these levels and stuff. And I know that if I went and took my time on them, I'd probably go through them a lot faster, and this run would have been a hell of a lot shorter. But it's just kind of like a problem that I've always had, I think, with platformers. You know, I always want to move fast. Like, I move fast, think fast, you know, it's just kind of how I am. And so whenever I see something that I ideally should wait to go and do, like jump over a bee or something, or wait in place until the proper rotation is done, I just kind of have a tendency to get very impatient with it. Ooh, geez, you almost hit me there. So for here, I just kind of straight up goofed up. I didn't even know that there was a free life down there. I literally thought there was like a bonus barrel or something, so when I was going down, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna grab the bonus barrel and get out, but I haven't played the title in so damn long that I actually forgot that, you know, it's just a life down there, so I wound up taking a hit, and then later on right here, I go and grab the DK barrel and all's forgiven. So I didn't really care for this boss too much in general. It doesn't really have so much to do with the it doesn't so much have to do with the first couple of phases that this boss has. I feel that the first couple of phases are actually really fun, and I enjoyed doing them quite a bit. The main issue that I had was the later phase, where it feels like when the projectiles launch is not really paired up really well with the animation of the boss undulating up and down. So eventually I got to the point with this boss where I just decided to use the cheese for him for going, and that little blind spot that he has and stuff. I tried doing it legitimately the first couple of times, but after a while you just get kind of sick with it. I feel like they kind of cut corners with this boss a fair bit. Like, the first couple of times are actually really nice and stuff. But after a while, like, it kind of feels like they cut corners. Like, right here, it feels like when the boss stretches down and then undulates up, it feels like the release for the spikes is really nice, but as he starts to go faster, it feels like it's out of sync a fair bit, which I never really cared for. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I just didn't really like how there wasn't really a super huge amount of attention paid towards this boss. So what it really boils down to is I wind up repeating this boss over and over again until I finally say to hell with it and decide that, you know, I'm just gonna go and use the blind spot and cheese him to death. Another issue that I kind of had with this is the entire area, like when I go and I look at it, it kind of looks like a rusted smear of sorts. I didn't really care for that. Like, I felt that it was really harsh to look at and stuff, you know, but I was kind of like, alright, you know, we're just going to go ahead and push through it and stuff, and that's going to be that. But I feel that red's like a really harsh color to look at in general. It wasn't something that I was just totally on board with, and it just makes for like a real miserable time playing the game, I think. You know, it feels like that, it feels like they kind of wanted to have a certain aesthetic and a certain feel for this boss fight, but I find that this entire boss fight in general is kind of a, well, it's an exercise in aggravation, I think. Like, I know people that can see normally and stuff, they still had issues with this boss. You know, they legitimately had issues and stuff, and they were going and struggling with it pretty hard, and, you know, so I was actually kind of shocked with low vision that I was actually able to go and beat this boss. I like how these, like, little shell missiles are done here and stuff. I thought that it was pretty cool. It's an interesting way to shake things up instead of having you hit urchins for the entire duration of the boss fight. So I try to literally go and time the shots and stuff, you know, and weave in between the spikes and stuff, but it kind of, I feel later that it kind of becomes really painful and stuff, and you don't want to cheese the boss, but at the same time you're kind of tired of the irregularities and stuff, and I felt that this boss could have been done better if they would have worked on timing a little bit more, where, you know, the spikes were as, where the spikes were paired better with the animation of the boss itself. I think that this boss would have been a hell of a lot more fun, but the timing release for the projectiles doesn't really quite match the boss, especially when the boss starts to speed up a lot. You know, and I think it kind of harms the overall experience with this boss in general. You know, it kind of feels like they were cutting corners towards the end. So from what I understand, this is like one of the last bosses that they actually did. And towards the end, like, they were under contract with Nintendo to, I think, create 3 games. And with this one, they were actually running out of funding. So it kind of feels like they went and they cut corners with a lot of things with it, and I just really wasn't like a huge fan whatsoever. It just felt really painful, and there's not too many bosses in DKC that I can say that I really didn't care for, but this one I think is probably, you know, the worst and stuff, and it's just really weird how the timing for the projectiles is. I would have even settled for having to deal with double the amount of projectiles, like one on top and one on bottom, when the boss goes to stretch out. But for some reason, they just decided to have the timing be really, really crooked on it, and it just didn't really feel that great. So around this portion with the boss, I was actually starting to get bored. Um, that kind of happens to me occasionally, like when I go and I fight a boss and stuff. If the boss is just taking way too long and stuff, I have a tendency to get bored with it. It's not so much the same philosophy like with Dark Souls. Like with Dark Souls, they would have bosses that would take a really long time, but I kind of understood it because the boss was really tough. With this one, it felt like that the boss fight was literally going nowhere, and that it was just really, really boring and poorly thought out and stuff. So a lot of the time when I would get to this boss, especially as a kid, I would literally just kind of pass it off to somebody else, or a lot of the time the run right there would start because the boss itself I feel is just really, really boring. And it's probably like one of the worst mistakes you can make in your game. Is like, it's one thing to be hard and stuff, but when your game is just like so tedious to the point where it becomes boring, I think that's probably one of the worst mistakes you can make. And so with this boss, I didn't really enjoy it that much. You know, like you kind of, I feel after a while you kind of groan and you look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be doing this again, I guess. And you know, it just really kind of, I don't know, it just like when the boss doesn't feel good, you just really don't want to fight it. You know, like at least with other harder bosses, it's like, you know, you feel like you're making progress. With this one, things feel like they're so poorly thought out that you're just kind of like, okay, why is this a thing? But no, the company later came out and they openly admitted there was a bunch of bad design decisions that was made with this game and stuff, and they even went out and apologized because, you know, they were trying to blame time constraints and a bunch of other things because these games, like all of DKC, was literally released, I think it was like a year apart. It was like a year and a half. It was really, really quick, you know. And so there was like a lot of crunch time, and I think towards the end it actually kind of hurt Rare more than anything else because a lot of the crunching and stuff really kind of reflects in the product. And mind you, you know, this was like way back in the 90s and stuff. We couldn't just look at the game and say, oh, not a problem, we'll go ahead and patch it later. You know, there were no patches and stuff. Whenever you released a product, whatever shape you released it in, that pretty much more or less defined you. And so as an end result, it would be a clear-cut case of, you know, if you released a bad title, if there's too many mistakes, your title wouldn't really sell well. And so finally, I get to the point here where I'm just like, you know, I'm going to cheese him. And I just kind of go into his blind spot a fair bit. I decide that I'm kind of tired of the boss, want it to end and stuff, so I just cheese him, collect the coin, and I'm out of there. So we're kind of heading on to the home stretch of the game and stuff. This is around the last 45 minutes of the title. And so I enjoyed this area, but I also hated this area. There was a lot of cool things that it did, and a lot of like really, really bad things it did. This level in general kind of reminds me heavily of the first couple of bonus levels that you can unlock in Donkey Kong Country 2, how they're kind of like this high-speed running through the forest kind of thing that you would see a lot with a bunch of enemies coming at you, and it definitely lives on in that set of levels. Ghosts, I think. You know, it definitely lives on in that fashion. You know, you can see a lot of the design influence and stuff, especially with how enemies cascade down, and you can definitely tell it was like the same principle and stuff. Overall, I didn't hate this level. There's a couple of things that make you kind of shit your pants a little bit, especially when you start getting on a super fast line like that. It's easy to run into enemies and you're like, oh, holy crap, there it is. But I don't feel that this level does anything super horribly. You know, the barrel enemies make a comeback, and, you know, we would see that a lot in these types of levels for DKC 2. So it was always just really interesting. I feel that the level does a good job keeping you stocked up on DK barrels as well, because I think they knew that you were going to be taking hits left and right, especially with like the rolling hedgehogs and stuff, and it was just really interesting stuff. You know, it's like one of those high-speed levels that you kind of are forced to get better at, and it wasn't bad. You know, I enjoyed it. So, not gonna lie, I had no idea what the hell I was doing here. I'm not sure if I wanted to go and start the collection stuff, or if I wanted to just go and visit the other caves. I think that it was so early in the morning that I was kind of having a little bit of a brain fart. So I was like, okay, you know, we're gonna go ahead and, you know, we're gonna buy everything, and then I was like, oh crap, you know, I need more coins. And so I wound up, I believe at this point in the run, I started going to Swanky's sideshow in the very first area just to get those extra coins for an item that I'm not even going to complete the quest chain of. So it's just really silly, I think, you know. When you're gaming and you're tired, it kind of makes you a little delirious towards the end. But yeah, I think I was just trying to break up the monotony of the run, because like I said, you know, DK3 wasn't my favorite game. I mean, I don't mind playing it every now and then, but it definitely doesn't hurt my soul to not play it either, you know? So it's at this point that Funky tells you about the gyrocopter for the first time. How you can go collect all the DK coins and then come back and he'll make you something truly special. I've only done, I think, 3 100% runs of this game. And afterwards, I kind of looked at like what you get for going and completing it, and it didn't really terribly, it just really did not seem appealing to me at all and stuff. I think the 2 still does it the best. It's not too much, it's not too little, it's just the right amount. It doesn't overstay its welcome. You know, with 3, I think it was kind of weird because with 3, it's like they tried to cram in as much playtime as possible, and the thing is like, not every game is meant to be super long. Like, literally, not every game is meant to be like, you know, 20, 30 hours long. Some games are really at their best when they're short. And I think that Donkey Kong Country in general is at its best when it's short. You know, because after a certain point it starts to feel like it overstays its welcome and stuff. There's a lot of games that are good that are like really, really short. You know, Resident Evil's one of them. You know, once you get used to speed running them and stuff, they're actually really, really short endeavors. So, but I feel with Donkey Kong Country 3, they kind of just wanted to have this really long game, and you're kind of looking at it and you're saying to yourself, oh man, you know, here I am playing this, and it kind of keeps on coming, you know, and so you go and it starts to feel laborious after a while, and they really just did not have to, they just did not have to make it the way that they did. So, with this level, it's got kind of a cool gimmick as well. These barrels are very much so in the same vein as the ghost ropes from the second game, where they just kind of pop in, pop out, except the dynamic is different. And so you gotta wait for it to pop in at the right time, because if you don't, you can screw up and die, or just screw up like what I did here. And so I actually kind of like that they brought it back. I think that the ghost ropes were direct influences, because I mean, you know, little barrels have like the little faces and stuff on them, and I just liked it a lot, you know. It's I feel it's a lot easier to work with these barrels as well, because they're solid white, and they have a red ring around them, which makes it easier for me to pick it up. So it's easy to tell, you know, what direction these are going in, and I really appreciate it, I think, more than the standard barrel. It doesn't blur in, with red it's eye-catching enough to where it doesn't really blur in an excessively large amount. And so I can tell, you know, what I'm going, or where I'm going, what I'm doing, things like that. So the secret to this little area here is you have to go and do a figure 8. Typically you have to talk to one of the other NPC characters to figure out to do it, but it was one of the more unique things that stuck out in my mind, so whenever I'm in this area I just have a tendency to go and do it, you know, and it's just kind of ingrained in my brain, I guess. But no, you just go and collect another banana bird, then get the hell out with it. So this far into the end of the game, they're still doing new things. The premise for this level is still pretty self-explanatory. You gotta run while dodging lightning and stuff, and it's actually really, really fun. I'm really bad at it, but it's really fun. And so they go and they try to reuse the water race level, well, elements of it from that other level a while back, and it's okay, you know. I like the premise of this level, but I don't really like playing it too much because it kind of slips into tedium sometimes. Especially when you're playing as Kiddy Kong, because he's like really slow and sluggish, and while he can move a little bit faster than Dixie and stuff and progress through the level a fair bit quicker, I just don't really like how non-responsive his turning is at times. It's just really kind of a weird thing. I think it's a nice touch that if you're in the water and lightning strikes, it electrocutes you. I mean, it sounds kind of morbid and stuff, but you know, they really kind of paid attention to little fine details in this level, I find, and it's actually like a lot of fun and stuff, and I really liked it. And there's actually something sort of funny about watching a con get zapped, and then when they do get zapped, you know, you see their skeleton and stuff, so it's a nice little attention to detail there as well. So this level, as well as the following level, are literally the bane of my existence. I hated this level. I'm pretty sure that somebody at Rare had a real sick sense of humor when they were going and designing this level. So the premise for this level is all the shield crocs that go and typically carry DK coins, they're all on extremely skinny platforms, and they will just bump you off into your death, you know, if you don't land on them perfectly square. Now, this level isn't really built for Kitty, it's definitely built for Dixie, since she can go and she can helicopter and like slowly lower herself down on top to do a nice precision landing and stuff. But oh man, I hated this level so much. Like, this level is just pure hell at times, like how they just go and say they bump you in the hole and stuff. And you know, I can understand wanting to do something new, but I think towards the end of the game they were getting bored. You know, like I think they literally sat down, and one of the developers there that was working on these, one of the designers, was literally sitting down saying, hey, I want to do something totally fucking dickish today. You know, like he'd just been developing this game for 9 months straight, and he's like, you know what, I want to do something dickish. And so they go and they draft this level and stuff, and oh my god, I hated it. I hated it so much. Oh jeez. You know, and the funny thing is like they try to like with interviews and stuff, they try to shrug it off and stuff. They were like, "Oh, it wasn't that bad." No, this shit was horrible. Like it was actually legitimately horrible, and oh my god, I hated it so much. And then, you know, here we go, trapped in between him and the wall. It's silly, but it's dickish. It kind of walks that weird line between being silly and just being absolutely fucking dickish. But no, I hate this level, but I laugh at it. Like, it does all kinds of things to me, and I'm not a fan of any of them, really, you know. And it feels good, though, when you do, like, a smooth run and you nail all of your jumps perfectly. Like, I am a fan of that. It does feel good, but trying to use them as... Ooh, hello. Trying to use them as just, like, oh, God, instant platforms was just painful. And then right there, my finger slipped on the, fast forward button, so that's what that quick jitter was, and because I got these long ass fucking fingers, and then I go and get butted to my death, and oh man, this level brought out the worst in me, like the actual legitimate worst in me. I was like fuming by the time I was done, you know, and I just, oh man, it really, like, to be going and doing a level like this that early in the morning, it wasn't a good idea. You know, like I typically do most of my recording at night because everything's a lot more relaxed, I think. You know, like everybody's in bed and stuff, and the house is relatively quiet. You know, so I like to do my recording at night for audio and video and everything else. But man, to be doing this level early in the morning and stuff, and then trying to justify it by saying, oh yeah, it's not that bad, you know? No, this crap was horrible. Like, it was actually horrible. I was so grateful when I was done with this level. You know, like, I was literally at that point where I was like, God, dude, do I really want to sit here and actually keep doing this? You know, it's not my first time playing a level that's, like, really prickish. You know, like, I see levels do really prickish things all the time with a lot of games, but this one, it was just a special breed of fucked up, I think. You know, so I railed against this level for like a really long time. I was like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do this, you know. I think at this point we were like 2 hours and 50 minutes into this run, and I was just kind of saying to myself, oh, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. You know, and then to make matters worse, I had a friend of mine that at the time, you know, we were going and video chatting, and I had my phone going and facing the screen, and she was just laughing way too hard. She was making fun of my fat ass the entire time, too. I was like, God, dude, really? You know, it was a laughable experience, and exercise and frustration, you know, it was all kinds of stuff. You know, but I'm pretty sure this level will live on in infamy. You know, it was a pain in the ass for people that could see normally. It was a pain in the ass for people that were trying to speedrun the game. Like, I know a lot of people that were trying to speedrun this game. This level would generally end it for them. You know, like even the placement of the goddamn DK barrel, or the halfway point was just really, really horrible in that regard. You know, this level leaves a lot to be desired. It's almost worse than the following level, which we will be covering, assuming I can ever beat this and, you know, get it through the door, so to speak. But yeah, I struggled against it hard. I wasn't even interested in any of the bonus barrels. The only thing that I had on my mind was getting the hell up out of here, because I just didn't want to deal with this crap. You know, I was like, no, this is not for me. Just, no, not at all. Thank God the enemies actually reset if you walk off the screen, because if you would have stayed camping on that ledge, I would have been boned. Like, I was just trying to push through as hard as possible, and oh man, it was the worst. I was literally sitting here going, you know what, we gotta do this. We gotta do it, we gotta get it done, and then when you reach that flag, it feels super sweet to get it done, and oh, damn, dude. And so with Poisonous Pipeline, oh Jesus. With Poisonous Pipeline, the weird thing is everything is in slow-mo. Or at least I'm pretty sure it's in slow-mo. It feels like it's slow-mo. And then all of your controls are backwards on top of it. Like, they kind of went through and they decided to be real dickish with this level as well. They're like, oh yeah, you know, these are the levels leading up to the final boss. Yeah, let's go ahead and make something real dickish like this. And so the weird thing is like you have to micromanage the movements backwards while moving slow, while trying to navigate. Like, it was just a hell of a nightmare. And it's really, really weird how they went about doing it too. You know, they were like, okay, we're not even going to tell you that things are backwards. What we're going to do is we are simply going to let you fall into the pipeline and realize that your controller is fucked. You know. So I thought it was just really obnoxious. Like, this is the only level that literally forces me to slow down. I cannot do any of this level high speed. I know, I've tried. It really kind of sucked and stuff, and then they were like, we're going to stick a lot of enemies in here as well. Like, I was just literally boarding the struggle bus from hell with this one. And then, so it kind of screws with your brain a lot, you know. It kind of does the same thing that the pilot controls for Panzer Dragoon's Way did, where it was kind of like, oh man, you know, we're going to go ahead and just fuck you up from the neck up, essentially. So I would keep trying to navigate through the level normally, and it just was not panning out. My brain was not clicking with the whole idea of just go and, you know, take your time and like all this other stuff. Oh man, yeah, it wasn't happening. It really wasn't. So, you know, like the last area of the game is literally my least favorite because it is loaded with some of the most dickish shit you will ever see in gaming. And looking back on it now, like, I can laugh at it and stuff, but oh man, when you're going and playing through it and stuff, it's really frustrating. Especially when you're trying to, like, take your time and do smaller maneuvers and stuff, because your brain has a tendency to forget, I think, sometimes that you're going and doing things backwards, especially if you kind of zone out for a minute. So I really, you know, they're trying to do something new, which I appreciate, but at the same time, it's like, you know, there's plenty of new things to try out. This is not one of them. You know, having high-speed urchins chase your ass around with backwards controls, I mean, it really was not great. It was not great at all. I was like, God damn, dude, really? You know? You got these goddamn clownfish making fun of my ass while I'm trying to squeeze past them, you know? I'm surprised they didn't go, like, thinking about it now, I'm surprised they didn't go the extra mile and just say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and swap buttons too. We're going to go ahead and swap all the buttons around. I'm surprised they did not do that. Thank God they only left it relegated to the D-pad. I don't know what the hell I would have done if they would have started adding extra buttons and crap. Oh jeez. Can you imagine using one of, like, the shoulder buttons to paddle? Oh jeez, that would have killed it for me. But no, it's, like I said, they just kind of continue shaking it up towards the end. It just kind of feels like, you know, they start becoming more dickish with a lot of it. And the weird thing is when I was younger, I was actually really, really good at this level. And now that I have to go and revisit it now that I'm older, I'm just like, ah, Jesus Christ. And then to make matters worse, everything looks like a giant purple haze. It's like, oh no. But, you know, I said that I was gonna go out and do it, so I did, you know, and this is the end result. You know, we finally made it to the end, and the first thing that flew out of my mouth, you know, was I was looking at the video chat at the time, and I was like, thank fuck that's over. Like, I wasted no time saying it. So, By the time I had gotten to this fight, I was so damn tired. Like, I was just struggling to remember anything about this fight. So I'm literally sitting down saying to myself, oh, okay, this is like the fight that we had last time. And I was like, oh, not even realizing that there's a barrel there on the right. Like, it literally took me a couple of minutes to realize, oh, hey, it's there. And then, you go over, pick it up, start the boss fight. It's just like, towards the end, I found that things, for me at least, were getting kind of funny a little bit, because I'm not only tired, I'm also annoyed on top of it, and some of the silliest shit happens in those conditions. And so a lot of my memory at this point was being jogged. Like, I was going and saying to myself, okay, it's time to remember all this crap. And I think it's funny, when you're younger, you'll remember pretty much anything and everything. But as you get older, like, your memory becomes way more finite. So you literally sit down and, like, whatever you haven't done in a while, when you're older, you kind of forget about it. And it's kind of shitty in that regard. And then I always thought this little stint with K. Rool here was actually pretty funny. He comes out and he's like, he's no longer a pirate, now he's a scientist. And I just thought that there was a certain level of hilarity there. But the dialogue for this was actually pretty funny as well. You can tell that they just did not take it seriously at all. And then, we got the shameless Scooby-Doo reference at the end there, I'm glad that Rare had fun making this game. But it really, I don't know, it just, some things are great, other things are bad. It really left a lot to be desired, I think. I still encourage people to play it and stuff. Like, if people ask me, hey, is DKC3 worth experiencing? I'll be like, oh, hell yeah. Especially to, like, the kids and stuff that are starting to get into retro gaming and stuff. I always recommend it. I mean, just because I didn't enjoy the game, it didn't mean that it was, like, a horrible title. It just means it wasn't my cup of tea. 1 and 2 are always going to be the best for me out of the original trilogy, and, I'm okay with that a fair bit. This fight itself isn't really terribly hard. It's just I was, like, struggling to remember a lot of it because I hadn't played this game in so damn long. And so what it boiled down, essentially, was I was literally sitting here, and I was saying to myself, okay, I'm, literally, in a stereotypical fashion, I'm literally saying to myself, haha, it's all coming back to me now. And so, literally, the first half of me trying to kill this dude is literally me jogging my memory. And so I'm literally sitting there doing my thing, and I'm like, okay. How do we go about doing it? Do we drop the barrels? Do we throw the barrels? And it was just like a lot of memory jogging and stuff. And then I was completely friggin' oblivious to the fact that you can crawl under him. Well, not crawl, but you can crouch under him and he'll float right over you. If I would have remembered that sooner, this run would not have an additional 15 minutes in it. Literally. Like, I was literally that damn tired. And so, like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what was it? Just think, just think. And then I thought it was, I thought that I had to go and jump around on all the handlebars. I mean, this fight that early in the morning was like a really huge clusterfuck for me. I was not only trying to film this mess, I was also, like, I had to be at a doctor's appointment that day as well. So I'm like, oh God, I gotta get into bed and catch like 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then go and, try to do my day. And so I was just all sorts of levels of screwed up at this point, with the boss and stuff. And I should have remembered a lot of this a lot quicker, but it's just weird because, like, prior to this, the last time I had touched this game, I think, was probably 10 years ago. Like, it was a really long time back. And then the last platform I played it on was, I own it on Nintendo 3DS. And so it was back when they were doing the whole virtual console stuff with all of their IPs instead of the Nintendo Switch Online rent-a-game thing. And so I thought that it was really, really kind of, it was just a hell of a thing, you know. Hindsight before doing this run, I guess I really should have just played through the game a couple of times, that way it doesn't look as bad, but I feel it would have taken away from the honesty of the recording, because the idea is that I'm going and I'm, you know, playing these titles with next to no vision and mistakes and all, and I feel like by going and doing a couple of runs, you kind of literally throw that under the bus. And so right about here I learned, oh hey, I can crouch under him, you know. And it was just like a hell of a thing, and you know, that light bulb goes off. But yeah, it was a hell of a thing, and this boss fight pretty much ran me through the ringer simply because I had my head up my ass. Like literally, I was like, nope, not for me. But once you figure it out, once it all comes back to you and stuff, you just kind of sit there and you're like, oh, okay, you know, I can go and do this, blah, 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 blah. And then as you remember, it gets easier as well. I always thought it was kind of funny as hell how he kind of dips down and electrocutes himself. You know, it's just really, like, they tried really hard to just be hilarious as hell towards the end, and I think I would have appreciated it more if it was kind of like spread out through the rest of the game. You know, instead of being concentrated in like the last third of it. But yeah, it was just a hell of a thing. You know, like this boss in general kind of continues the tradition of Donkey Kong's final boss being just long as hell with a ton of hits and a lot of mechanics, and I don't really mind it too much. You know, it used to aggravate the hell out of me, but now it's just kind of like, meh, it's there, whatever, you know, and you just kind of learn to live with it. I was so tired towards the end of this fight that once I'd gotten to this stage where there's like periodic zaps and stuff, for some reason in the back of my mind, you know, every time he would get electrocuted, the only thing that would snap into my brain would be him screaming fuck at the top of his lungs every time he got barbecued. And I have no idea why, but you know, I thought it was hilarious as hell. Like, literally, I thought it was just the funniest goddamn crap that I had ever seen in my life. And the weird thing is like, at that point in the recording, I had no idea why it was funny. It just, you know, it just would pop in there, and I would just laugh so hard. So, but, you know, we finally beat him. We made it there. And, you know, so at this point, there's like 12 more minutes in the rest of the recording and stuff. We save Diddy, we save DK, you know, we got this giant goddamn husk of a robot in the background with a goddamn reel-to-reel. Then we got Cranky over there talking shit. But to be fair, that's kind of what Cranky does. You wouldn't have got glasses, would you? But the ending is fairly stereotypical, like all of the other DK games. They show you all the enemies, and they show you all the bosses and stuff, and I always liked that about Rare, you know, like if you didn't know what the hell the name of the enemy was, it would show you, you know, and they did a good job with it, I think. So, but with that thought in mind, that's going to be the end of the commentary for Donkey Kong Country 3. I greatly appreciate you guys coming out and stuff, and hope you guys had a good time. You know, I look forward to seeing you guys again, and who knows what the future's gonna bring. I haven't decided the next batch of games to play yet. This is the final recording for the first batch of games, the last recording for the batch of games that actually got commentary. And so I'm thinking I may start to do survival horror next. I'm not gonna fail at it too much because with survival horror, it's a lot more calculated and it's not as hard, I think. So, but yeah, we'll see what the future brings. I may do some Resident Evil, I may do some Silent Hill. I don't know yet. So thank you all for coming out, and until next time.